The stars were cold and empty in the outer rim of the galaxy. At least, that was what Commander Zethkar had always believed. His people, the Kalari, had ruled this part of space for 300 years. Their crystal ships moved like hunters through the darkness, taking what they wanted from worlds that could not fight back. Zethkar stood in the command center of his flagship. The walls around him glowed with a soft blue light, and the floor beneath his feet hummed with power. His ship was beautiful and deadly, just like all Kalari vessels. It was shaped like a long crystal, sharp at both ends, with weapons that could burn through any armor he had ever seen. Today should have been like any other day. His fleet was moving through space near the Veltar system, where his people had recently won another easy victory. The Veltar were peaceful creatures who had never learned to fight properly. They had surrendered quickly when the Kalari arrived, just like so many others before them. But something was different today. The communications officer, a young Kalari named Vel Shin, turned toward the commander with confusion in her large, dark eyes. "Sir," she said, her voice uncertain, "I am picking up strange signals." Zethkar moved to her station. The screens showed wave patterns he had never seen before. They were coming from a system his people had never explored, a place they had marked on their maps as empty space with a single yellow star. "What kind of signals?" he asked. "I do not know, sir. They are not like anything in our databases. The patterns are too complex, and they repeat in ways that suggest intelligence, but not any intelligence we have encountered before." Zethkar felt a small chill run through his body. In 3 centuries of expansion, the Kalari had met many different species. Some had been strong, others weak, but all had been predictable. These signals were something new. Far away, in a system that Kalari did not know existed. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the largest warship ever built by human hands. The U.E.'s Leviathan stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its dark hull covered in armor that could withstand the heat of a star. Morrison was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 15 years climbing through the ranks of the United Earth Navy, fighting in the asteroid wars and leading exploration missions to the outer planets. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. The bridge was darker than most military ships, lit only by the soft glow of screens and displays. This was not because humans preferred darkness, but because the Leviathan was designed to be invisible to most sensor systems used by other species in the galaxy. "Status report," Morrison said to his second-in-command. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes looked up from her station. She was younger than Morrison, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. Like everyone on the ship, she had been chosen for this mission because of her skills and her ability to keep secrets. "All systems are ready, sir," she said. "The other ships in the fleet are in position and waiting for your orders." Morrison nodded and looked at the main screen. It showed a view of space that would have amazed anyone from old Earth. 36 other massive ships hung in the darkness around the Leviathan, each one a fortress of metal and weapons. This was humanity's true fleet, built in secret over 50 years while the rest of the galaxy believed Earth was still a primitive world. The plan had been simple in concept, but difficult to execute. When humans first detected alien signals in 2087, the world's governments had made a choice. Instead of announcing their discovery, they had decided to listen and learn. For decades, they had studied the aliens from a distance, learning their languages, understanding their technology, and most importantly, watching how they treated each other. What they learned had not been encouraging. The galaxy was full of predators. Strong species conquered weak ones, taking their resources and enslaving their populations. There were no galactic police, no universal laws of peace. Only the strong survived, and the weak became slaves or died. So humanity had chosen to become strong. Admiral Paul Graham sat in his command chair aboard the UES Dominion, the fleet's command ship. He was an older man, nearly 60, with white hair and scars on his hands from his early days as a fighter pilot. He had been chosen to lead this mission because he understood both strategy and the cost of war. Graham reviewed the mission files. One more time. Operation Daybreak was humanity's introduction to galactic society, but it would not be the introduction most species expected. Earth's strategy was based on a simple principle. If you wanted peace, you had to be strong enough to enforce it. The Kalari had been chosen as humanity's first target for several reasons. They were aggressive. They had recently conquered a peaceful species, and they were far enough from Earth that their destruction would not immediately threaten human space. Most importantly, they were known throughout the galaxy as bullies, who only attacked those weaker than themselves. "Sir," came a voice from the communication station. "We are receiving a transmission from the advance scouts." Graham nodded. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers belonged to Captain Tony Rodriguez, commander of the UES Vanguard. His ship was one of the smaller vessels in the fleet, but it was fast and equipped with the best sensors humanity could build. "Admiral, we have visual contact with the Kalari fleet. 47 ships, arranged in a standard patrol formation. They appear to be conducting routine operations near the Veltar refugee convoy." Graham felt anger rise in his chest. The Veltar refugees were survivors of the recent Kalari conquest, families who had managed to escape when their world fell. Intelligence reports said the Kalari were planning to hunt them down and either kill them or drag them back as slaves. "Would not happen today. All ships," Graham said into his communicator, "prepare for hyperspace jump. We execute Operation Daybreak in 10 minutes. Across the fleet, 37 of humanity's most powerful warships began to prepare for battle. Their crews had trained for this moment for years, running simulations and practicing maneuvers in the empty space between Earth and Mars. They were ready. In the Kalari fleet, Commander Zethkar was still trying to understand the strange signals his ship had detected. He had called his science officer to the bridge, hoping for answers. "The signals are definitely artificial," the science officer reported. "They show patterns of language and mathematics, but they are unlike anything we have encountered. The species that created them must be highly intelligent." "Where are they coming from?" Zethkar asked. "A system approximately 12 light years from here. Our maps show it as empty space with a single star and some planets, but we have never sent ships there to investigate." Zethkar made a decision. That would change his life forever. "Set course for that system. I want to know what is sending those signals." He had no way of knowing that by the time his ships could reach that system, its inhabitants would already be coming to him. The countdown reached 0, and Admiral Graham gave the order that would announce humanity's presence to the galaxy. "All ships jump." Space twisted around the human fleet as 37 dreadnoughts vanished into hyperspace, carrying with them the hopes and fears of an entire world. Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation around the sun, its people unaware that their children were about to become the most feared military force in the galaxy. The age of human dominance was about to begin. The Kalari battle fleet was moving through space in perfect formation when their sensors began screaming warnings. Commander Zithkar had been reviewing reports from his science teams when the alarm started. The sound filled the bridge of his flagship, a high-pitched wail that meant only one thing. Something very large was about to emerge from hyperspace nearby. "Report." Zethkar shouted over the noise. His sensor operator, a nervous young Kalari named Tekvar, stared at his screens in disbelief. "Sir, something is coming out of hyperspace. The gravitational distortion is massive. I have never seen readings like this." Zethkar moved to the main viewing screen just as space began to twist and bend in front of his fleet. The familiar blue glow of a hyperspace exit point appeared, but it was huge, much larger than anything the Kalari had ever created. Then the first human ship appeared. The U.E.'s Leviathan materialized slowly, its enormous bulk seeming to push space aside as it returned to normal reality. Zethkar felt his breath catch in his throat. The ship was impossibly large, easily 10 times the size of his own flagship. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, and covered in what looked like thick armor plating. "By the Crystal Throne," whispered his second in command. "What is that thing?" Before Zethkar could answer, another ship appeared. Then another. And another Dock Captain Jake Morrison stood calmly on the bridge of the Leviathan as his ship completed its jump from hyperspace. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency, their training taking over as they executed the most important mission in human history. "Jump complete, sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes. "All systems nominal. The other ships are coming through now." Morrison nodded and watched the tactical display as 36 more human dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace around them. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built with technology that had been developed in secret over 5 decades. The smallest was still larger than most alien capital ships, and the largest could have served as mobile cities. "Formation Omega," Morrison ordered. "Execute total eclipse deployment." The human fleet began to move with a precision that would have impressed any military observer. Each ship knew exactly where it needed to be, and they moved into position, without hesitation or confusion. Within minutes, they had formed a perfect sphere around the Kalari fleet, with each human ship positioned to bring maximum firepower to bear on any target within their perimeter. Commander Zethkar watched in growing horror as more and more human ships appeared around his fleet. He had commanded warships for 20 years and had never seen anything like this. The alien vessels moved with perfect coordination, their formation so precise it seemed like they were controlled by a single mind. "How many ships?" he asked his sensor operator. 37, sir. All of them are larger than our biggest dreadnought. I am trying to scan their weapons and armor, but our sensors cannot penetrate their hulls." Zethkar felt cold fear beginning to replace his initial shock. In 3 centuries of expansion, the Kalari had never encountered a species with technology superior to their own. They had always been the strongest, the most advanced, the ones who decided the fate of other worlds. Now they found themselves surrounded by ships that made their own fleet look like toys. "Open communications," Zethkar ordered. "All frequencies. I want to talk to whoever is commanding those ships." The communications officer tried every method of contact known to Kalari science. Radio waves, laser communications, quantum entanglement signals, even the old method of flashing lights in mathematical sequences. The human ships remained silent, hanging in space like sleeping giants. Lieutenant Hayes coordinated with the other ships in the human fleet as they completed their deployment. The total eclipse formation was one of humanity's most effective tactical arrangements. It created an unbreakable cage of firepower that could destroy anything caught inside while protecting the human ships from attack by any outside force. "All ships report ready, sir," she told Morrison. "The Kalari fleet is completely surrounded. They have attempted to contact us on 17 different frequencies, but we are maintaining communication silence as ordered." Morrison studied the tactical display. The Kalari ships were impressive by galactic standards, he had to admit. Their crystal hulls gleamed with internal light, and their weapons arrays showed they were designed for battle. But compared to human technology, they were primitive. Earth scientists had studied alien ship designs for decades, learning their strengths and weaknesses. Every human ship had been built specifically to defeat them. any sign of hostile intent. From the Kalari? Morrison asked. Negative, sir. They appear to be confused rather than aggressive. However, intelligence reports indicate they will likely attempt to fight once they realize the situation. Morrison nodded. That was exactly what human planners had expected. The Kalari were predators, but they were also intelligent. Once they understood they were trapped, they would try to find a way out through violence. Admiral Paul Graham sat in his command chair aboard the UES Dominion, watching the tactical situation develop exactly as the war games had predicted. His fleet had achieved complete surprise, surrounding a larger enemy force without losing a single ship or firing a single shot. Status report from all ships, he ordered. The reports came in quickly. Every human vessel was in perfect position, their weapons charged and ready, their shields at maximum power. The months of training and preparation had paid off. His fleet was ready for whatever came next. Sir, came a voice from the communication station. We are detecting activity among the Veltar refugee ships. They appear to be trying to move away from the combat zone. Graham nodded approvingly. The Veltar were smart to try to get clear of the area. What was about to happen would be dangerous for anyone caught in the middle. Have the Mercy and the Hope move to escort the refugees to a safe distance, he ordered. Make sure they understand we are here to help them, not harm them. Two of the smaller human ships broke formation and moved toward the Veltar convoy. Their crews had trained specifically for humanitarian missions, and they knew how to approach frightened refugees without causing panic. Captain Nina Rodriguez commanded the UES Hope, one of the ships assigned to protect the refugees. She was a career naval officer who had volunteered for deep space duty because she believed in humanity's mission to protect those who could not protect themselves. Open a channel to the Veltar ships, she ordered her communications officer. Channel. Open, ma'am. Rodriguez chose her words carefully. The Veltar had been through enough trauma already. This is Captain Nina Rodriguez of the United Earth Fleet. We are here to help you. Please maintain your current course while we handle the situation with the Kalari. You are under our protection now. The response came back in broken Galactic. Standard, the common language used for trade throughout the galaxy. Human ships. You are really here to help us? The Kalari have hurt us so much. Yes, Rodriguez replied. We are here to help. The Kalari will not hurt you anymore. Back in the main battle area, Commander Zefkar was beginning to understand the hopelessness of his situation. His tactical officers had run every scenario they could think of, and the result was always the same. His fleet was completely outmatched. Sir, his weapons officer reported, I have analyzed the formation of the alien ships. They have positioned themselves so that any attempt to break out would result in concentrated fire from multiple directions. Even if we used our most powerful weapons, we could not create a gap large enough for our ships to escape through. Zefkar felt something he had never experienced before in his military career: complete helplessness. His ships were trapped. His weapons were useless, and his enemy had not even bothered to speak to him. What do you recommend? He asked his senior officers. The answer came from his oldest advisor, a veteran named Kolthak, who had served in the Kalari military for 40 years. Sir, I recommend we prepare for surrender negotiations. We are clearly outmatched, and continuing to resist will only result in the destruction of our fleet. The words hit Zefkar like a physical blow. Surrender was not a concept the Kalari were familiar with. They had always been the ones accepting surrender from others. Admiral Graham checked the chronometer on his command display. The human fleet had been in position for exactly 30 minutes, maintaining perfect formation while the Kalari struggled to understand their situation. It was time to move to the next phase of the operation. Open communications to all ships. In the area, he ordered, all frequencies, maximum power. I want everyone to hear this." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir. You are broadcasting to all ships within sensor range." Graham stood up from his command chair and straightened his uniform. His next words would be heard across the galaxy within hours, carried by traders and travelers to every inhabited world. They would mark the beginning of a new age. "This is Admiral Paul Graham of the United Earth Fleet," he began, his voice calm and steady. "You have entered territory under human protection. The Veltar people are under our care, and any attempt to harm them will be met with immediate and overwhelming response." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "To the Kalari Fleet, your ships are surrounded and outmatched. You have one opportunity to surrender peacefully. Any aggressive." Commander Zethkar's surrender lasted exactly 3 seconds before his pride overruled his common sense. The moment the words left his mouth, he felt shame burn through his body like fire. No Kalari commander had ever surrendered in battle. His ancestors would curse his name if he became the first. "Cancel that transmission," he snapped at his communications officer. "All ships, attack formation Delta. Target the largest enemy vessel and fire everything we have." His bridge crew looked at him with expressions that mixed hope with terror. They knew this was probably suicide, but they also knew they could not live with the shame of surrender without a fight. The Kalari fleet moved with deadly grace. There, crystal ships arranging themselves in the formation that had brought them victory in 100 battles. Each ship charged its main weapons, creating a light show that turned their hulls into blazing jewels against the darkness of space. Captain Jake Morrison watched the Kalari formation change on his tactical display. He had expected this reaction. Human intelligence had studied Kalari psychology for years, and their profiles all pointed to the same conclusion. They would rather die fighting than live with defeat. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes reported, "the Kalari ships are powering weapons and moving into attack formation. They appear to be targeting us for their first strike." Morrison nodded calmly. This was exactly what the Wargames had predicted would happen. Signal the fleet. Execute Protocol 7. Demonstration of force authorized. The order went out. All 37 human ships simultaneously. Protocol 7 was not designed to destroy the enemy fleet, at least not yet. It was designed to show them exactly what they were facing before they made their final mistake. The human dreadnoughts began to move in perfect coordination. Their sphere formation shifted and flowed like liquid metal, rearranging itself into a wall of steel and firepower that stretched across space. Each ship positioned itself so that its main weapons faced outward, creating a barrier that seemed to block out the stars themselves. Admiral Paul Graham watched the maneuver from his command ship with satisfaction. His fleet was performing exactly as designed, showing the galaxy what human military engineering could accomplish. But the real demonstration was still to come. "Target selection complete," reported his weapons officer. 3 large asteroids have been identified for demonstration purposes. All ships report ready to fire. Graham looked at the tactical display. The 3 asteroids were perfect for showing the Kalari what human weapons could do. Each one was roughly the size of a mountain, made of solid rock and metal. Destroying them would require enormous amounts of energy, but it would prove a point without killing anyone. "All ships," Graham said into his communicator, "you are authorized to fire. Show them what we can do." The first volley from the human fleet lit up space like a new sun being born. 37 dreadnoughts fired there, main weapons simultaneously, creating beams of energy so powerful they could be seen from light years away. The beams reached their targets in seconds, and the results were spectacular. The first asteroid simply vanished. One moment it was a massive chunk of rock floating in space. The next moment it was expanding cloud of superheated gas. The second asteroid lasted slightly longer, glowing white-hot for several seconds before it too exploded into nothing. The third asteroid tried to resist, its metal core holding together for almost 10 seconds before the sustained fire turned it into plasma. Commander Zethkar stared at his viewing screen in absolute horror. His ship's most powerful weapons could have cracked those asteroids, maybe even broken them apart over several minutes of concentrated fire. The human ships had vaporized them completely in seconds. Analysis, he managed to whisper to his science. Officer Dot, the science officer's voice shook as he read his instruments. Sir, the energy output from each human ship was approximately 50 times greater than our main weapons. If they had targeted our ships instead of those asteroids. He did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge understood. The entire Kalari fleet would have been destroyed in the first second of combat. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, the humans are transmitting again. Admiral Graham's voice filled the Kalari bridge once more, calm and professional. Commander Zethkar, you have now seen what our weapons can do. Those asteroids could have been your ships. You have one more chance to surrender peacefully. Any attempt to engage us in combat will result in the immediate destruction of your entire fleet. Zethkar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. He saw fear there, but also a strange kind of relief. They had seen the demonstration too, and they understood that surrender was no longer shameful. It was simply the only option that would let them live. But before he could respond, his tactical officer shouted a warning. Sir, 3 more groups of ships are approaching the system. The signatures match the vessels that are already here. On the tactical display, new contacts were appearing at the edge of sensor range. More human dreadnoughts were arriving, adding their mass to the already overwhelming force surrounding the Kalari. Fleet. Captain Morrison received the update from his sensor officer with satisfaction. Sir, Battle Groups 7, 12, and 23 have arrived as scheduled. Total human ships in the system is now 114. Morrison almost smiled at the absurdity of it. 114 of humanity's most powerful warships, all aimed at 47 Kalari vessels that were already outmatched by the original 37. But the message was important. This was not just about winning one battle. This was about showing the galaxy that humanity had the strength to enforce peace anywhere they chose to go. Lieutenant Commander Hayes coordinated the arrival of the new ships with her usual efficiency. The new arrivals are taking positions around the system perimeter. They report all systems ready and weapons charged. The Veltar refugees watching from their convoy ships could barely comprehend what they were seeing. In the space of an hour, they had gone from being hunted prey to being under the protection of the most powerful military force they had ever witnessed. Captain Nina Rodriguez opened a channel to the Veltar ships again. This is Captain Rodriguez. We are bringing additional ships to ensure your safety. Please do not be alarmed by the new arrivals. They are here to help. The response came back immediately, filled with wonder and gratitude. Captain Rodriguez, we have never seen anything like this. Your ships are so large, so many. Are you really here to protect us? Yes, Rodriguez replied firmly. That is exactly why we are here. Back on the Kalari flagship, Commander Zithkar was trying to process the tactical situation. His fleet was now outnumbered by more than 2 to 1, and each enemy ship was vastly superior to his own vessels. The mathematics of the situation were simple and terrifying. Sir, his senior advisor said quietly, we must surrender now. To continue fighting would be the murder of our own crews. Zethkar knew the old warrior was right. This was no longer about honor or pride. This was about survival. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. This is Commander Zethkar, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. I formally surrender my fleet to your forces. We will power down our weapons and await your instructions." The response came from Admiral Graham himself. "Commander Zethkar, your surrender is accepted. However, surrender is only the first step. You and your people have committed crimes against peaceful species throughout this region of space. There will be justice for those crimes." Zethkar felt his stomach drop. What do you mean?" "I mean," Graham replied, "that this fleet will escort you back to every world you have conquered. You will return what you have stolen, free the people you have enslaved, and pay compensation for the damage you have caused. If you refuse, we will simply destroy your ships and handle the matter ourselves." The Kalari commander realized that surrender had not saved his fleet. It had only changed the manner of their destruction. The humans were not just more powerful than his people had imagined. They were also more thorough. "And if we agree to these terms?" Zethkar asked. "Then you will be allowed to return to your homeworlds under human supervision. Your military will be restricted, but your people will be allowed to live in peace. The choice is yours." Zethkar looked around his bridge one more time. His officers were waiting for his decision, but he could see in their faces that they already knew what it would be. The age of Kalari expansion was over. The age of human dominance had begun. "We accept your terms," he said finally. Admiral Graham's response was swift and final. "Very well. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Human inspection. Teams will verify that your ships are in compliance with surrender terms. Any attempt to resist or escape will result in immediate destruction." As the Kalari ships powered down their weapons, news of the encounter was already spreading across the galaxy. Automated communication drones launched from both human and alien. Ships carrying word of what had happened to every inhabited system within 100 light years. The message was simple but revolutionary. Humanity had arrived, and they were stronger than anyone had imagined. The old order of galactic politics was ending, and a new order was beginning. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge, watching as the first human boarding parties prepared to inspect the surrendered call. The human boarding parties moved through the Kalari ships like professionals studying museum pieces. Commander Jake Morrison watched the inspection reports come in from his tactical display, each one confirming what human intelligence had suspected. For years, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes coordinated the boarding operations from the bridge of the Leviathan. "Sir, Team 7 reports that the Kalari weapon systems are even more primitive than our estimates suggested. Their most advanced plasma cannons would barely scratch our secondary armor." Morrison nodded, but felt no satisfaction from the report. Discovering that an enemy was weaker than expected should have been good news, but it only made him think about all the innocent species that had suffered under Kalari rule simply because no one had been strong enough to stop them. "What about their database systems?" he asked. "Team 3 has accessed their main computer networks. They are downloading complete records of Kalari military operations for the past 50 years. The preliminary data shows conquests of 17 different species, with estimated civilian casualties in the millions." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. The intelligence reports had been accurate, but seeing the actual numbers made it real in a way that briefings never could. 17 species destroyed or enslaved, millions of innocent beings killed, all because the Kalari had believed they were the strongest force in the galaxy. They had been wrong about that. Admiral Paul Graham stood in the command center of his flagship, reviewing the surrender negotiations that were taking place with the Kalari leadership. The terms were not negotiable, but the aliens were still trying to find ways to minimize their losses. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "Commander Zethkar is requesting a private channel to discuss the surrender terms." Grom considered. The request for a moment put him through. The Kalari commander's image appeared on the main screen. He looked older than he had an hour ago, as if the reality of defeat had aged him years and minutes. "Admiral Graham," Zethkar began, "I want to discuss the terms of our surrender. Some of the worlds you want us to evacuate have been under Kalari control for over a century. They are our worlds now." Graham's expression did not change. "Commander, you seem to misunderstand the situation. You are not in a position to negotiate. You are in a position to accept our terms or be destroyed. Which would you prefer?" Zethkar was quiet for several seconds before responding. "The worlds we have conquered are important to our economy. If we give them all back, our civilization will collapse. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to build your economy on slavery and theft," Graham replied coldly. "Your civilization was built on the suffering of others. If it cannot survive without causing that suffering, then perhaps it deserves to collapse." The harsh words hit the Kalari commander like physical blows. In his culture, strength was everything, and weakness was despised. To have his entire civilization called weak by an alien was almost unbearable. "What if we agreed to free the slaves, but keep the worlds?" Zethkar asked desperately. "We could rule them more fairly, treat the native populations better." Graham's answer was swift and final. "No, you had your chance to rule fairly and chose. Conquest instead. The native populations will be returned to self-government under human protection. Your people will return to your original worlds and find new ways to survive that do not involve hurting others." The channel closed, leaving Zethkar to stare at a blank screen. His senior officers looked at him with expressions that mixed hope and despair. They were hoping he could find a way out of this situation, but they were beginning to understand that no such way existed. Captain Nina Rodriguez was coordinating the humanitarian operations with the Veltar refugees when she received new orders from Admiral Graham. The refugees were not the only victims in the system. There were also prison ships, vessels full of beings from different species who had been captured by the Kalari for use as slaves. "Captain," her first officer reported, "we have located 3 Kalari prison ships at the edge of the system. Sensors indicate they contain approximately 2,000 beings from at least 6 different species." Rodriguez felt anger rise in her chest. The Kalari had brought their slaves with them, probably planning to use them for forced labor in whatever new conquest they were planning. "Signal the prison ships," she ordered. "Tell them they are under new management." The boarding of the prison ships was different from the inspection of the warships. The human Marines who went aboard were prepared for what they would find, but it still shocked them. The prisoners were kept in conditions that would have been illegal for animals on Earth. Sergeant Bill Carter was the first human to enter the main holding area of the largest prison ship. He was a veteran of many combat operations, but the sight before him made him sick to his stomach. Hundreds of beings from different species were crammed into spaces barely large enough for dozens. They were thin from poor feeding, and many showed signs of abuse. "This is Sergeant Carter to all boarding teams," he said into his communicator. "Medical teams to all prison ships immediately. We have a humanitarian crisis here." The human medical teams worked with desperate efficiency to help the freed prisoners. Dr. Jenny Walsh, the chief medical officer of the UES Hope, found herself treating injuries and diseases she had never seen before, working on alien species whose biology she was learning as she went. "How long have you been prisoners?" she asked one of the freed beings, a member of a species called the Threnody, whose people were known throughout the galaxy for their artistic abilities. 3 years, the alien replied in broken galactic standard. "They took us from our colony world after we refused to give them our young people for their armies. They said we would work for them until we died." Dr. Walsh felt tears in her eyes as she worked to treat the aliens' infected wounds. "You will never be prisoners again," she promised. "The humans will make sure of that." News of the human intervention was spreading across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. The Kalari had been one of the most powerful military forces in this region of space, and their sudden defeat was sending shockwaves through every government and military organization within 100 light years. On the world of New Geneva, the ruling council of the Stellar Trade Federation held an emergency meeting. The Federation was a loose alliance of merchant species who had survived by staying neutral in conflicts and paying tribute to whatever aggressive species controlled their trade routes. "Are we certain about these reports?" asked Councillor Velkin, a member of the Rigel species whose people were known for their business skills. "An unknown species has defeated the entire Kalari battle fleet?" "The reports are confirmed," replied the Federation's intelligence chief. "We have confirmation from 17 different sources. The humans not." 6 months after the battle that changed everything, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the newly built human embassy on Veltar Prime. The planet below him was green and blue again, its cities rebuilt with human help, its people free for the first time in 3 generations. The embassy itself was a marvel of human engineering, a gleaming structure that rose from the planet's surface like a crystal spear reaching toward the stars. But Morrison was not looking at the building. He was looking at the massive shape of the UES Guardian in orbit above, one of 50 human dreadnoughts now stationed throughout this region of space. "Sir?" came a voice behind him. Morrison turned to see Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes, now wearing the insignia of a full commander. Her promotion had come through the day before, along with her new assignment as military liaison to the Galactic Council. "The morning briefing is ready," she reported. "We have received communication requests from 12 more governments overnight. It seems word of our humanitarian efforts on Rigel 7 has spread faster than we expected." Morrison nodded and followed her to the briefing room. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of activity as humanity established its presence throughout the galaxy. What had started as a military demonstration had become something much larger, a complete reorganization of galactic politics. The briefing room was filled with reports from across human space. Admiral Paul Graham had been promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command of all human military operations in the galaxy. Under his leadership, 30 separate battle groups were now patrolling trade routes, protecting weak species and ensuring that the surrender terms imposed on the Kalari were being followed. "Status report on the Kalari compliance?" Morrison asked. Commander Hayes consulted her datapad. 93% compliance so far. They have returned control of 14 conquered worlds to their original inhabitants and paid reparations to 6 refugee populations. Commander Zethkar is currently on trial for war crimes on New Harmony, and early reports suggest he will be found guilty but given a chance for rehabilitation rather than execution. Morrison felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness at the news. Justice was being done, but he could not undo the centuries of suffering the Kalari had caused. "What about the other aggressive species?" he asked. "The hegemony of Kresh has requested negotiations after our battle group arrived in their territory last month. The Saurian Empire has withdrawn from 3 disputed systems without being asked. Overall, aggressive expansion activities have decreased by 87% in the past 6 months." The news was better than Morrison had dared to hope. Humanity's strategy of overwhelming force, combined with fair treatment, was working. The galaxy's predators were learning that conquest was no longer profitable, while the prey species were finding protection they had never known before. Captain Nina Rodriguez was no longer commanding a single ship. She had been promoted to Commodore and given command of the Humanitarian Fleet, a group of 20 specialized vessels designed specifically for rescue and relief operations. Today she was in orbit around Threnody, the homeworld of the artistic species that had suffered so badly under Kalari rule. "Commodore," her aide reported, The Threnody government has formally requested to join the Human Protection Alliance. They are offering to provide cultural and artistic services in exchange for military protection. Rodriguez smiled as she looked down at the planet below. Threnody was famous throughout the galaxy for its beautiful art and music, but its people had been too peaceful to defend themselves against aggressive neighbors. Now they could focus on what they did best, while humanity handled their security needs. "Send word to Admiral Graham," she ordered. "Another species wants to join the Alliance." That makes 37 so far. The Human Protection Alliance had been Admiral Graham's idea, and it was proving to be one of humanity's most successful innovations. Instead of conquering worlds or demanding tribute, humans offered protection in exchange for cooperation and friendship. Species that joined the Alliance kept their independence, but gained the security of knowing that human dreadnoughts would come to their aid if they were threatened. Admiral Graham himself was on Earth, standing in the newly built Global Defense Command Center that coordinated all human military operations across the galaxy. The room was filled with displays showing the locations of human fleets, Alliance worlds, and potential trouble spots. "Sir," his chief of staff reported, "we have a problem in the outer spiral. The Vorthan Collective is massing ships near the border of Alliance space. Intelligence suggests they are planning to test our resolve." Graham studied the tactical display. The Vorthan Collective was one of the few remaining aggressive powers that had not yet learned to respect human strength. Their ships were more advanced than the Kalari had been, and their military commanders were known for their cunning. "How many ships are they massing?" Graham asked. 237 warships, sir. It is the largest fleet they have, assembled in 50 years. Graham considered the situation carefully. The Vorthans were testing humanity's commitment to protecting its allies. If they were allowed to succeed, other aggressive species might decide that humans were not as strong as they appeared. "Signal battle groups 15, 22, and 31, he ordered. "They are to converge on the Vorthan border immediately and send a message to the collective leadership. Tell them that any attack on Alliance worlds will be considered an act of war against humanity." The message that went out to the Vorthan Collective was delivered by a single human ship, the UES Messenger. The ship was small compared to the Dreadnoughts, but it carried the full authority of Earth's military might. Captain Dan Foster commanded the messenger, and he had volunteered for this mission because he believed in what humanity was trying to accomplish. He had grown up hearing stories about the old days when strong nations on Earth had bullied weak ones, and he was proud to be part of ending that pattern on a galactic scale. "This is Captain Foster of the United Earth Ship Messenger," he broadcast. "To the Vorthan Fleet. I carry a message from Fleet Admiral Graham to your leadership. You have massed ships near the territory of species under human protection. Any aggressive action against our allies will result in immediate military response from Earth's fleet. You have 48 hours to withdraw your ships and return to your territory." The response came back within minutes, filled with arrogance and threats. "Human vessel, you are in Vorthan space without permission. We do not recognize your authority here. Leave immediately or be destroyed." Captain Foster's reply was calm and professional. "I will relay your response to my superiors. I suggest you use the next 48 hours to reconsider your position." Back on Earth, Admiral Graham received Captain Foster's report with grim satisfaction. The Vorthans had chosen confrontation over wisdom. Now they would learn the same lesson that Kalari had learned 6 months ago. "All available battle groups are to converge on Vorthan space," he ordered. "We will give them one more chance to withdraw peacefully. If they refuse, we will remove them ourselves." The human response was swift and overwhelming. Within 36 hours, 87 human dreadnoughts had assembled at the edge of Vorthan space. The fleet was commanded by Admiral Sarah Burke. one of humanity's most experienced officers. Admiral Burke had fought in the asteroid wars and led exploration missions to the galactic core. She understood both the necessity of strength and the responsibility that came with it. "Signal the Vorthan fleet," she ordered. "This is their final warning." The Vorthan response was everything Admiral Burke had expected. They attacked immediately, sending their entire fleet against the human ships in a coordinated assault that should have overwhelmed any enemy. Instead, it barely scratched the human shields. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the Vorthan Collective had lost 60% of their fleet, while the humans had suffered minor damage to 3 ships and no casualties. The survivors surrendered immediately, their commanders finally understanding what the Kalari had learned months earlier. News of the second human victory spread across the galaxy even faster than the first had. Within days, every remaining aggressive power had withdrawn their fleets and opened diplomatic channels with Earth. The message was clear. The age of conquest was over. Captain Morrison received word of the Vorthan defeat while he was touring a refugee camp on New Geneva. The former prisoners and displaced beings who lived there had been given temporary homes while their original worlds were restored. But many had chosen to stay and build new lives in Alliance space. Captain, one of the refugees approached him, a member of the Siren species whose homeworld had been destroyed by the Vorthans decades earlier. "Is it true? Have the Vorthans really been defeated?" Morrison nodded. "It is true. And unlike your homeworld, their defeat came before they could destroy anyone else's." The refugee's eyes filled with tears. "My children will never know what it feels like to live in fear. Thank you. Thank your people. You have given us something we thought was lost forever."